Hey everybody, welcome to Floyd County Emergency Management. We are getting started here in just a few moments. We're going to let some more people come into the room. Looks like we're up to 19. So we're just going to kind of hang out for a little bit. You can call your friends, call your neighbors, share the chat with them, and have them log in. We're happy to have the county police here today and the district attorney's office, victims assistance, victim witness. So thank y'all for coming in. So today is Safe Internet Day, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So tell us why we have such a thing as Safe Internet Day. If y'all just, we'll kind of break the ice with that. Tell us about Safe Internet Day and what it means to you, because the GBI is also taking part in it, right?
Do you want to? Okay. So the Safety Internet Day is here really because we have seen a rise in child crimes against children, specifically involving the internet. Whether it's online gaming, whether it's apps, they have access to tablets or phones at a very early age, and a lot of these apps have messaging capabilities. So we see that a lot of children fall victim, and we want to make the parents aware that sometimes might not be aware of all these features on the apps that our kids are using.
Okay. So that's why we're on Facebook right now, is because this is where everybody's at. You know, sometimes it's hard for folks to get out, so this is just one of those innovative ways we're trying to get out and meet the community where you're at and talk about some of those topics that are really important. So the Floyd County Police is being super proactive when it comes to investigations of these types of crimes. Can you talk briefly about kind of what you're doing and maybe the track record of how that's looking? It's been pretty successful. Well, unfortunately, it's been successful, but you're able to stop some of these folks that are predators, right?
Yes, we have been able to. Luckily, with parents being a little more aware of what's going online, they have more access to report if there's any suspicious activities or if their children are talking to people that are asking for inappropriate information. It could be images, it could be personal information, addresses, phone numbers. So I believe with us speaking with the community more about what's going on online, it's opened up better communication for parents to know what to do if their children do unfortunately fall victim to any of these crimes.
And from the district attorney's office perspective, we are seeing a lot more people and victims who didn't know that this stuff was monitored and out there forever. So we're trying to get the word out.
That's kind of the dangerous thing about it. Things like Snapchat messaging that disappears, and even the internet. You may go and delete it, but it's still out there, right?
It is, yes. And there are ways that it can be recovered and then used in a criminal prosecution where somebody thought that it would be lost after 10 seconds or 30 seconds.
Yeah. Some of the sad cases that we'll talk about. Let's jump right into it. Sextortion is one of those. That's where a picture has been made and you've shared it with somebody in hopes that it's kept private. But then what happens after that? What is that? What is that case about?
So so an individual can willingly share an image with another person, and they do believe it'll be private. But then let's say there is a breakup or an incident where that person then shares the image across social media. Someone gets that image and can use that image to threaten an individual for money, or just to say, if you don't do this, I will leak this image. That's become big between anywhere from adult to childhood. If someone is on Instagram and they think they've met someone that they're in a relationship with, they're sharing images, then that person turns around and says, if you don't send X amount of money, we're going to share these images with your entire family on social media. So one thing we do say is if that does happen, do not comply with the demands of the individual, because if they ask for money, if you send it, it's not going to stop. They're going to continue to ask for more and more money. So the best thing to do is not to comply and just immediately report that image to the application that you're using, and if need be, to local law enforcement.
Yeah. And Amber, like you said, they can request more money, or sometimes they can demand more pictures. And again, don't comply with that. Don't send more pictures. Don't send more money. Don't send money at all or pictures. But if it happens, like you said, report it. And that's something we can charge, right? That's something
Yes.
that's fairly new too.
Yes, it can be charged depending on the age. It can be charged if it is a minor, and it also be charged as an adult if it is used in a negative way.
We've talked about kids a lot in this case, but that type of crime can also occur to middle age and even the elderly. Somebody who has recently lost a spouse, widowed, a widower, they may be lonely at home, and the same sort of thing can happen. Maybe not with the manipulation of images, but they could start to carry on a relationship of sorts, and they can start to require money of them and start to make those demands.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you advise parents to do? I guess the best is to just be nosy, right? What do you advise them to do?
Absolutely.
Most definitely, of course, we want to allow our children some freedoms in life, and that is fine, but to an extent. Children don't need to have just unlimited access to phones without any kind of monitoring, because it's a wide world with access to. It's not just local. I mean, children can be talking to anyone, anywhere. It's good to know what apps your children are using, who they're speaking with. A lot of people say my friend, and if you ask more about your friend, they've never met them. They met them on Snapchat. They live in Minnesota. Just kind of be aware and speak with your children about who these are and what the friendships is, and having healthy relationships with friends or romantic relationships that you meet online. As well as make sure you have, access to your child's phone. Make sure you do have their passcode. Randomly, if you feel the need, you might need to look through just to make sure, for safety, that your children's not talking to just anyone and sharing information. Like I said, it could be sexual images, but it could be personal information about your household. As well as many of these apps, there's people that, with sextortion, where they're requesting money from you. There's also apps where individuals are offering to give money for images or for certain things. So we just want to make sure that as parents we stay on top of that.
And that also applies to Chromebooks. A lot of the schools are giving Chromebooks for school use, or iPads, things like that. Parents, you need to be looking through those as well, because even though they are set up to not have certain access, there are ways around that.
And Amber, you touched a little bit on knowing passwords, but that's not only on your phones, because within apps, you can also have those restricted with a password. Same on phone, you can restrict or have password protected images, videos. And it goes for the other apps too. So not just know the one password on the phone, make sure those apps are not requesting passwords or passcodes, and know those if there is.
Yeah, a big one I know a lot of parents aren't aware of is For My Eyes Only on Snapchat.
That's right.
I can't tell you how many times we've talked to parents, and I'll say, well, do you know the For My Eyes Only password? And they'll say, what is that?
Yes.
And then once we get that, that's where a lot of images can be stored. So it is good to know all the passwords. And like I said, we're not saying to constantly monitor everything your child's doing. We just want to be proactive and just be aware of what our children are doing online.
So we've got a pretty good crowd right now in the room. I want to encourage you, if you've got any questions for these folks, these are the professionals. So if there's anything that's kind of been weighing on your mind that you've been thinking about, drop that in the chat and we'll try to look at it. So we looked at passwords and that sort of thing. Is there a such thing as an internet curfew? Is that something that you can put in place and have going in your house? What does that look like?
A digital curfew is good, especially for younger children, because, well, for one, you don't want them staying up all night. They need to get sleep. But just allowing just the unmonitored access to the phone in a room, closed door, parents are asleep, so we don't know exactly what's going on. We're not kind of walking by and seeing. So I would definitely suggest digital curfews, whether that's, leaving your phone in the living room to charge overnight. A lot of phones, I know Apple, you can set screen time limitations. You can set app limitations. So that's definitely something I believe is very beneficial, so that children don't just have access to the internet.
For those that don't have, say, data on their phone, but still rely on that Wi-Fi at home, can you turn off the Wi-Fi at a certain time? Is that something that's a possibility too?
I believe, yes, that is. I know with certain carriers, you're allowed to block. But like I said, if that is a concern, or if you don't know how to do that, that is a good thing. Where I know a lot of parents will, you charge your phone in my bedroom. You don't need your phone. If they say I'll use it for an alarm clock, of course we can get an alarm clock anywhere. So if need be, if you're not very good with technology, then that's also an option, that all phones come and charge in a certain area, that the parents, can kind of monitor where the phones is at night.
So let's say, for example, a child has been grounded, they've done something wrong, you've taken away their phone, you've cut off their access. They've still got access to the internet through other devices, right? Even old telephones, if they borrow a phone from somebody. Gaming systems, right?
Gaming system, tablets, Chromebooks, and a lot of times friends will bring friends' old phones to school, so that you may not even realize there's a second phone, they could leave it at school. So there is other ways that children can access the internet. We just have to be as vigilant as possible, but just make sure we're not only monitoring the phone, but gaming systems. I know a big one, Discord is big through gaming. There have been issues on Discord where people may pretend to be the same age as the children that are playing. They never meet them, so the kids, of course, are going to believe if someone says that they're 14, there's really not a reason for them not to believe it. Becomes friends with them, and then it could eventually lead up to the grooming, where they're talking, giving compliments, and then eventually start asking for, possibly inappropriate images or information.
And I've also had cases where the offending party, the adult, has sent the child the phone after they've gotten theirs taken away. So that's something that we need to check on as parents. Check the mailbox to make sure there's nothing coming in for the child, because I've had cases where the offender sends a phone.
Well, no, any unexplained money. So if your 10-year-old is getting gift cards in the mail,
Yes.
or they all of a sudden have unexplained cash, just ask, where's this coming from? Because it's not, people can send through, Apple Pay or Cash App. They can send money. So if your kid is all of a sudden has an excess of cash or gifts, that's definitely something you'd want to speak with them about where that's coming from.
We're starting to get some questions in, so if y'all have got just a second, we'll take a moment from our conversation. Looks like Cynthia has asked a great question. Thank you for jumping in. What steps should a parent take when they discover that the child has already sent pictures? So that might be a two-part question for there. So if y'all want to touch on that, what should you do if you discover they've already sent the pictures?
Report it as soon as you can. Try to preserve the picture without actually taking another picture, or preserve the video without having to record the same image again, because we don't want to get into the production of anything inappropriate. But definitely try to preserve and report as soon as possible, right?
Yes.
Screen names. Save screen names.
Save screen names of who your children are talking to, if they're if any names are mentioned, if the children know them by any name. Immediately, if you can, bring the phone so that it can be previewed, and the appropriate measures can be taken to preserve and hopefully prevent it from going any further at that point.
And talk with your child about why this is dangerous. Talk with them about how the implications of sending pictures, and then talk with them through each part of the process when you report it and what you're doing.
Yeah, that's very good, because you don't want though your child might have sent a picture, we have to also remember that the child is going to be the victim here.
Yes.
And they need to feel comfortable enough to come forward and share that information.
That was actually one of the next questions is, how should I begin to talk to my child about internet safety? So I think you kind of addressed that. Before anything happens, go ahead and be proactive and sit down.
Yeah. Talk to them, let them know that, I hate to say that this is not a Barney world, but that there are people who may not have their best interest at heart, and that, once something is put out there on the internet, it is there forever. And can oftentimes be recovered even if deleted. So I would start with that.
Ted has got a really good point that he's made here. Thank you for that, for pointing that out, Ted. A lot of apps may not look like they're a chat app, but the Bible app, Words with Friends, different things like that. You can store images, you can send messages. So what should a parent do? Should they go through and look at every single app on the phone and just be familiar with it? Is that how you answer that?
Absolutely, be familiar with it. Know what the app does. And that is a good point. There's a lot of apps where they can message, and not necessarily that they're meeting on Words with Friends, but then the offender leads them to these kinds of apps because they know what they're after from the beginning, where our children do not, right? So
I've recently learned that people can put inappropriate images and contact information on Apple Music. I never would have thought that. When I learned that, it blew my mind. So where people create an album on Apple Music, you can put a photo, so they can put an image on there, and they could put in the description like a screen name for another social media app. And that is a way. And I would, until that was brought to my attention, I never would have thought to look in Apple Music for inappropriate content.
Sure.
So did I just date myself by talking about Words with Friends? Is that a thing anymore?
You have to have friends to play Words with Friends.
That's a good point there, Amber. Lorena asked a good question. Thank you, Lorena. When should I report a runaway?
Immediately.
So it doesn't have to be 24 hours?
No, immediately.
And that's a good question. A lot of people do think it's 24 hours, right? A lot of people think, well, we need to wait because maybe juvenile court won't accept a charge until they've been gone 24 hours. But as law enforcement, we can do a lot of work in those 24 hours, especially, we're talking about internet, especially if your child has met somebody online, if they've met up with the offender and they're traveling. They can get very far very quick. We have a lot of airports nearby. In a car, if we, in a couple hours, they can be several miles away.
Yeah.
What are some things you might notice with your child? There's going to be an attitude change, getting angry, hiding their phone? What are you going to start to notice when they've developed a relationship like that? What would you see?
So they can be very protective of their phone. Of course, most teens are protective over their phone, but there can be a change. So where they're usually just on their phone all the time, it could be where they're turning their screen. Like if you're in the car and they're trying to turn their screen when they're texting. When they go to the bathroom, they used to lay it on the couch. Now they're taking it with them. They're very protective, or they can become closed off, staying in their room a lot, or they can seem very nervous when the notification goes off on their phone, and that can be another sign of the sextortion. And that could be they're terrified to open that message and see what the person is saying now. So just, your child, and we know that teens go through their emotions, but when it just feels different. So it's just very important that if that is standing out to you, just to talk to your children. And it's very good to start talking when they're young. Just as soon as you can, as soon as they get a phone, explain the seriousness of having the phone and the appropriate behavior when you have one. So if we start, I know people now are giving their kids phones at 9, 10 years old. Mm-hmm. So as soon as they get that phone, start talking about it, because I know it's going to feel a lot more awkward if we're trying to start talking to a 16-year-old than if we started as soon as they had the phone.
I know we used to have latchkey kids. Now we've got iPad kids.
Yes.
You'll see the kids on the iPad in the restaurant, to keep them quiet. It's in the doctor's office, things like that. So, what are some other messaging options that these predators have when it comes to that? We talked about the games and that sort of thing. So basically anything you can use to send a message on, right?
Yes. Well, of course, Snapchat. We know children live on Snapchat now. Most young people don't use the messaging app unless they're talking to family, parents, grandparents. So TikTok. We have Instagram, of course. So Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok. Whisper is a big one. It's an anonymous app. It's just you sending out messages to people in the area. Tinder, dating apps. Kick Messenger is a big one. And I know Captain Long was talking about Omegle because you had worked a case.
Right.
And that's an anonymous app as well.
It is, and that's another thing that we have to remember, that it's not just people in our county, it's not people in our state or country even. It's these are global apps, and they could be talking to anybody in the world, and that makes it sometimes tougher for us to make a case that's prosecutable. So that's why it's important also for parents. Though we do the best that we can on our end, we also count on you parents to do the same for the children, right? And then when they do become victims, Sandy, or we're able to make a charge, what kind of services do you guys have for the victims?
So we have a wide array of services. Probably the biggest one is the ability to pay for counseling. We can help a child get into support groups, and not just children, adults as well. Any victims, we can help get into counseling. We have methods that we can, and people that we can work with to try and get the images down or the content down and stopped. We have every every district attorney's office in Georgia has a victim witness unit that is set up to deal with things like this. And so even if a case can't be prosecuted, those services are still available to those victims. And so counseling is the biggest one, but then also coping mechanisms and ways to get the content off the internet.
Speaking of counseling, what is the child thinking at the moment that they realize they've done wrong? Because it's not just private anymore, it's everybody. It can
Everybody's
be
out
everybody
there.
At school.
Yes, they're embarrassed, they're afraid they're going to be in trouble, that all their friends are going to see, and we are seeing that more and more, that something that they've sent to one individual is now all around the school. And so these kids are often very embarrassed, and it can also often lead to bigger issues, a child becoming suicidal or self-harming, things like that.
Sometimes it's important, even though you don't suspect your child may be involved, it's important to mention to your child to do the right thing, to stand up for somebody and either report it or say you don't need to share that. That's wrong.
Yes, absolutely. So yeah, your child might not be the one sharing the content, but they might know of someone who is. And so encouraging your child to not share that, to stop others from doing that if they can, and then encouraging the child to report.
So research suggests that 19% of teens have sexted. 34% of those have received a text. That's probably gone up a good bit. It's not all the time that the person on the other side of that is a teen, though, that they're sexting and texting with, though, right?
No, a lot of times it could be an adult pretending to be a teen, or it could be an adult that is just, looking for a child, paying attention, grooming them, giving compliments, like we said, sending gifts, and trying to convince this child that they do care for them. And like you said, the numbers are probably most definitely higher. These are probably reported, so I'm sure there's a good bit more that was not reported. So yes, a lot of times it could be between classmates or boyfriends, the ones that we're going to be with forever, and they trust us in the images. But sometimes it is a complete stranger. But we definitely need to talk about the importance of not sending these images. And if someone does send you an image, to report it.
Okay. We're still accepting questions. If you've got any questions for these professionals, y'all been doing this for a while, right? So if there's something you've been thinking about, drop it in the chat. We'll try our best to get it answered. We talked about preserving the evidence. There may be some people who may not understand that practice of why don't you want me to video it or save it on my phone, because at the point you save it on your phone, it becomes child pornography, and then you may have intended well, but it's still become carrying on of the same crime, right?
That's
and
right.
And the same thing.
Ultimately, yes.
And the
yes.
same thing with kids, even though they're a child of the same age, if they've got a picture of the person that's under the age, then that's technically child
right.
pornography, right?
And yes, that's right for the parents. And then we've heard about the exposure accounts or the exposure pages. Same goes for that. Whoever is running that page, whoever has access to it and is sharing and uploading onto that, ends up becoming a person that's either transmitting or producing it.
Sandy, you had a question.
Not to take us back, but one other thing that parents can do is, especially for parents of younger children, set a password. Require a password for apps and things to be downloaded. That way, at least you're ensuring that you know what's going on your child's phone or tablet.
That's a good point. And we talked about being nosy, but the reason for the being nosy is not just that. It's because it helps us when there is a child that comes forward and says that they've been a victim. Then if the parent is able to get us that information, or if the child's run away, we've seen that sometimes they'll leave their phone behind, but parents don't know the password to it. But if they were to have it, then that helps us as law enforcement to be able to track down where they might be going or who they might be with.
Yeah. If they've put in, if the person had sent a meeting location or a meeting time, it can definitely help get kind of a head start on where we're going, what we're looking for. If the child has run away, or if they went to and just meet and come back,
Yes.
and then it turns a whole different route at that point.
Also, if your child has run away, try and find a up-to-date picture, as close to what they look like as possible, so that the police have the best chance of finding your child.
And on that's another reason it's good to know who your friends or your kids' closest friends are, because a lot of the times, they may tell their friend, "Hey, I'm gonna sneak off and meet so and so." So if you do know their friends, at least that kind of gives us a place to start. And have you spoken with the individual, and they might can give a little more information that even the parents aren't aware of, because we do understand kids live their own life, and they usually share a lot more with their friends than they do
That's right.
their parents.
So we've had some folks come into the chat late, so we want to kind of go over some of the things that we've already been talking about. Today is Safe Internet Day. A lot of other agencies are online chatting about the same sort of thing and talking about this, but this is just one of those days where we're trying to get the word out to encourage parents and guardians to pay a little more attention to what your kids are doing online and on their telephone. You can do so much with your telephone. So we're talking about apps. We're talking about different ways that you can message these victims that are out there. So we're talking about Snapchat, game platforms, servers, anything like that. Just be on your kids' phones. Look at what they're doing. Be familiar with the apps that they're using, because these apps that you may not be familiar with, don't just put it aside. Be on it, looking at it, and really investigating and taking part in your child's life. I understand that at a certain point, teens want to kind of gain some independence, and that's fine. But at a certain point, I think they also appreciate you knowing that you're there for them and you care about them, right?
That's right.
And you saying that, it is very good to let your child know that even if they do something that someone might initially want to be angry about, why did you do this? Why did you send that image? Let's try to put that on the back burner right up front. Just be supportive. If they come forward to tell you that this has happened, we want to be supportive. We can have the hard conversations later, but right up front, we want to be supportive. That way they can feel safe and trusting and coming to talk to us about what's going on. And then we can talk about the reasons why we shouldn't be sharing this information or sharing these images online. And so it's very good just to have an open relationship and open conversations with your kids.
I can, it's easy to be frustrated. It's angry to be angry. It's easy to be angry in the moment that this has happened, but at the end of the day, we talked about counseling. We need to remember that this child is a victim.
Yeah. And we have to remember, it takes so much courage to come forward and say, I believe I've fallen victim. And if they're coming to us as parents and trusting us with that, then we should take the best steps possible. Now, not all the times does it get reported that way. Sometimes it gets reported through NCMEC or friends that are true friends and come forward even when things are tough and know what's best for their friend. And sometimes we'll get reports that way too. But remember, it takes a lot to come forward and disclose, hey, I think I've sent some pictures and maybe I shouldn't have. What do we need to do? And that's when the parent needs to have a plan.
And of course, if anyone has questions, you can always feel free to reach out. The schools have resource officers that have a lot of great help. So I know some parents might be a little more in contact with school resource officers because they see them at games and when they drop the kids off. So if you ever just have a question, as a parent, just come forward and ask, and that way we can get you the most updated and best information for what's going on.
So let's talk a little more about digital curfew. What is that, and how can you really restrict that in your home?
Digital curfew, picking a time that, let's say 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. That's it. No more phones. Like I said, if you can get certain apps that will restrict phone use. Apple, sometimes you can go through Apple Family, restrict phone use. If that's not an option, you can, if you know about how to cut the Wi-Fi off from your cell phone. And if not, like we said earlier, if you're not into technology or you're not that savvy with it, just have the phone where it charges in your bedroom. The children, like I said, they don't need to have unlimited access at night with the phones. So, you just bring them into your room, put them on the charge, and then allow them to have the phones back in the morning.
And I know that my internet provider has an app where I can actually just go to the app, click a button, and turn off the Wi-Fi for the night. You don't even have to go to the router anymore at times. So that's a way to do it too.
Somebody else has mentioned Google Family Link as being a way to control internet access as well.
Okay.
So, one question from Ted. What if a parent is concerned to make a report because they are worried their child might get charged? Does every kid get charged, and if not, what happens?
No, of course, it's case by case. Not every child is going to get charged. Now, are we talking like if it's a victim child or a child sharing the images? But no, not every child is going to be charged. We're going to have to look at it in the totality of what's going on. If it is, two kids that are in a relationship and they made some bad decisions, and there may just be some mediating, some counseling that needs to go in effect. The charges is more for if someone is being a predator and they're out there for. We understand teens and we understand kids, but if someone's out to be a predator to cause harm and they are causing harm, then that's when we would need to discuss.
And Chris, traditionally we would, when we say charge every child or charge every kid, usually that happens. We talked about the exposure pages when a teen participates in uploading or sharing a picture or sharing that post. then that's when your child's more likely to get charged. When your child's a victim, when they have shared pictures and they've become a victim, I have not seen where the child gets charged for that because they ultimately are the victim in the case.
And really, the most important thing is teaching your child why this is not appropriate. And you know, obviously, charges are very scary, but you'd want to stop this behavior before they become an adult, and punishment is much more severe. So, talking with your kid and making sure that you can stop it at that point and not make it any worse.
And Chris, whenever children are charged, when I say children, anybody under the age of 17, so 16 and under, it's usually through juvenile court as well, and we have to remember that juvenile court is there to rehabilitate, not to punish, right? So if there is a charge, they're looking to how to help the child, because we don't want them to reoffend as adults. Is really probably their purpose.
So something we talked about at the very beginning, like I said, we've had some folks come on. We're probably getting close to wrapping up, so if you've got questions, make sure you drop those in the chat. In the beginning, we talked about sextortion. Let's, if we can just kind of recover that again for some of the folks that came in. What is that, and how does that affect our teens?
Amber, you did really good with that.
So, sextortion is typically, it can be where, let's say if you're in a relationship and you send an image, either as a juvenile or an adult, you send an image to your significant other, and either if you are going to break up and they threaten you with the image and they say, if you break up with me, I'm going to show this image to everyone, or they do share the image because they are upset, they share it with a group of friends, or if you meet a person online and you create a friendship or a relationship, online relationship, where they start requesting images, you send images. At that point, you realize they are probably not who they said they were, and they start requesting money. And you send me $100, I won't share the images. Send me $500, I won't share the images. What we do want to stress is to not comply with the demands, because a lot of the times online, if they do ask for 100, you send 100, they're going to keep asking for more. That's or right. They ask for one image, they're going to keep asking for more images. So if that is a situation you find yourself in, do not comply. Immediately report, get the screen name, report that individual, report the screen name, and depending on depending on your age, if you need to report to law enforcement, or if you just want to report to the app itself to let know that this is going on.